you've arranged the member moment and our speaker for the evening.
Well, Anne organized the member moment. Who is our member moment?
Oh, Anne, you're here too. Do you want to do that?
Yeah, Gary Saxe has agreed to do a member
Gary.
moment tonight, and I've been really looking forward to it. I've seen a lot of his pictures on Facebook, and he's doing a lot of great things, and so I'm excited to hear him. Thanks very much for agreeing to do that, Gary. And
Very
if
welcome.
any of the others of you would like to do a member moment, please contact me, and I will fit you in the schedule. So welcome, Gary. Yay.
Hi. Yeah. First, I created this on Lightroom. So for those of you who are thinking about a member moment, if you go to the slide program, it works, pretty good once you get the hang of it. So there's so most of us have the ability to do that if we want. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share the screen. And wait a second. Tab. There we go. And I gotta do that. And then before I start here, after the first rains of autumn, mushrooms pop up everywhere. And Marnie and I Marnie's my wife, we like to go for walks. And so these are a couple, we've got Armstrong Woods, and around our neighborhood, we like to walk for our health. And we find there's a lot of mushrooms because there's different, a lot of the yards have chips that are decaying and mushrooms are popping up. And then there's some oak. We're right in the edge of oak woodlands and like that. So here we go. All right, let's see what happened to
Very
my.
nice, Gary. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you.
Thanks, Gary. You've got a huge variety.
That's
of
quite
pictures.
amazing.
Yeah,
Mhm.
just over
Think
the
of-
years. I mean, some were from last year. Most of them are from this year. And
That's-
then,
I really like the cup ones that have little beads inside them.
yeah, those
What
are the
kind of
bird's nest. And we
Bird's
found
nest,
those
is
in
that what
a,
it's called?
yeah, the
Very
bird's nest
cool.
mushroom. And those little like seed things, those are the spores. And when the rain comes along, it scatters them around. And this actually is in someone's on our walk along the edge of the sidewalk. The chips, a lot of people out here are using chips for ground cover. And as those decay, we see different types of mushrooms, a lot of little tiny ones and stuff. So you got to get low. Now, the bird's nest with the Z8 there's part of the, you can do photo stacking, and you can automatically set the close focus on it, and it'll take as many pictures you want out to infinity. And the bird's nest now were 40 photos, and then they were stacked in Photoshop.
Wow.
So that's why I really was after the crisp look of that rather, and getting away from the depth of field. But the depth of field works in a lot of things, and and that was done with the 105 macro, the new Z105 macro, and it's really sharp. It's
Yeah,
it's
I like that
nice.
lens too.
Anyway, that's
I didn't hear the music. You referenced music at the end, and the same thing happened when I did my member moment. Nobody heard my music. Did anybody hear music?
No.
No, when
No.
when you share your screen, you have to click the little box that says
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Oh, that was the best part. I had no idea. Yeah.
So what do you have to click, Bill?
share audio. It depends on which system you're using, but it's when you share your screen, you
Oh.
have the option of sharing your computer audio with Zoom,
Oh.
and that's how.
Yeah, I know what I did there is I had it saved as a in Windows, and Windows Media Player came up, and when you can save the slideshow that you produce as a MP4, and somehow I got on into the MP4. It didn't play the music for me, but it was set with nice music on that. But yeah, I'll have to remember that if I do another one that.
Yeah, me too.
Because I really like the tempo and things like that. Anyway.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Great
Gary.
event, so.
Yeah, thanks. The images were great.
Thank you.
There's Carol.
Yeah, I'll wait for Linda, but now I'm trying to bring myself up. View your screen sharing. New share.
No, you're already sharing. You're fine. You can get rid of
Oh,
the
it's
Zoom screen.
interesting. Oh, wait a second. I need to bring up,
There you go.
but I won't. Okay, but I won't start yet until Linda and okay. Now this is where I just enter full screen. I just want to make sure that my music is on. I clicked it previously, but I don't always trust.
Yep.
Works.
Yep.
Great. Okay. So I'm ready anytime you guys are, and I'll,
Hey, Linda.
yeah. She disappeared.
She's there, but her sound is muted.
You're muted, Linda.
There.
Here I am just talking to myself. That's always so exciting, But I wanted to, I think we have a few Bozeman-ites, don't we, tonight, Carol? A few years.
I saw Leslie Eddington, Amy Cox. I don't know. Amy Wright Evans is on.
Okay, well, I just wanted to welcome you,
Yeah.
Bozeman-ites, and so glad that you guys could join us with Carol. And Carol has been a professional photographer for over 30 years and resides in Bozeman, Montana. I've known Carol for 12 plus years. I met her when she presented a program for the Camera Club of Bozeman, and she's been my mentor ever since. I have attended many, many of her courses and workshops, even after retiring to California. It's what's so nice about Zoom. She is an accomplished photographer, instructor, and writer, and has received many accolades along the way. She developed a photography program with adult community education through the Bozeman Public School System, and she's published articles in a variety of magazines, both in the US and abroad. She's also published 2 books, one on the greater Yellowstone ecosystem and the other entitled African Wildlife. Carol has taught me that as a photographer, we need patience, perseverance, and passion. She always encouraged us to shoot outside the box and outside of our comfort zone. I found out a little bit about the patience part when I went photographing with Carol and at an osprey nesting site a few years ago. We sat for 3 hours, watched, photographed, and edited as the juvenile and adult osprey flew around, and Mom was trying to teach the kid how to fly, and he did about 5 or 6 face plants before he could take off. The fanny fatigue was all so worth it. I've seen Carol sit in a kayak for hours, watching and waiting for the perfect cormorant, pelican, or fisher person to cruise by. Carol has photographed and conducted workshops all over the world. She usually travels and shoots alone and often sleeps in her trusty Toyota RAV4. What year is that? Anyway.
2002 with 422,000 miles on it.
Yeah. And how many new engines? Yeah.
Only 2
rebuilt engines. 2 rebuilt engines. Okay. Well, that's cool. So anyway, Carol is a firm believer in the art of seeing. She spends, and you'll see that tonight, she spends hours watching and studying animal behavior. When photographing wildlife with Carol, we get a real education as to the behaviors, all the behaviors to look for, when to shoot, why to shoot, and who to shoot. And at first, I thought maybe she was telepathic or something, because sitting and shooting sandhill crane, she would look at me and she'd say, in 1 minute, that crane is going to roll both those eggs over. And I'm like, yeah, right. Okay. 1 minute later, the crane rolls these suckers over. And I thought, oh boy, she's telepathic. I know that. Boy. But anyway, enough for me. I want to turn you guys over to Carol and her program, Intimate Moments.
Well, thank you, Linda, you can hear me, right?
Yes.
You bet.
Okay. Thank you for that introduction. That was a little bit more than I was expecting.
A little strange.
But thank you for the intro, and thank you to the others on the committee for inviting me to do this. And Gary, I thought your mushrooms were great. It just reminded me of so many things that I've taught previously, not just mushrooms, but looking at the edges. And when I saw the accordion like underneath the mushroom, I thought that looks like my air filter that was pulled out of my car about 2 weeks ago. And they said, hey, you need a new air filter and cabin filter with that accordion like mesh or felt in there that was absolutely filthy. So welcome to Intimate Moments with, I'm going to throw this out. This was not an easy presentation to put together. Intimate moments with dissimilar subjects, and yet they are similar. And how are they similar? It has to do with your concept that connects them. So my question to you, when you look at some of these pictures, is it an emotional concept that connects? Is it cultural? Is it a word? And I'm definitely going to stress words, because that is so important to what is your idea and how can your idea be different? Is it man-made versus nature? And in putting this together, I may have found something that was man-made. Now I had to go through my entire library and think, what do I have in nature that is similar to man-made? So when you see these the diversification in subjects, I pretty much look at photography in its entirety as an artistic art, which simply means that if you put me in a foreign element and say, okay, go photograph that, I'm going to be able to do that simply because of compositional rules or guidelines, which I think you're all pretty adept with, understanding light and my positioning to light. And so when I'm out taking a picture, I'm trying to sell that picture eventually. I don't know where, because it's become very, very tough to selling calendars, postcards have fallen by the wayside, etc. So I might take the same shot and use it as an editorial storytelling, or maybe in teaching classes, selling prints, etc. I'm going to open up with two very dissimilar subjects here. I'm sure you're going to see the similarity. So here we go with sound. I'm going to decrease a little and make sure you can hear it. So very dissimilar, and yet similar in that they're graphic, vertical, horizontal, obviously black and white. If you take a picture that's in color and you go, on the computer, it just doesn't look, try it in black and white, especially if you've got a lot of contrast between light and dark. So I've got two friends who play piano, and I asked if I could photograph them. So to make it a little bit more artistic, I decided to use the slow shutter speed. Which one I chose first, I can't remember. It was for a class about 5 years ago. And where one of these subjects, it was probably the shadows and trees, that for some reason connected me with piano keys. I have a degree in music, and that may be why it connected me. So in looking at the intimate moments with varying subjects, challenging you to try and get out of your comfort zone and shoot something that's foreign, exploring different subjects. Right here is quite important. Again, it comes down to, if you understand your compositional rules or guidelines, great. Let your eye be led into the photo, try and get it impactful. And according to the light, is it overcast? Then you can move around and change your position. If it's sunny, then you're dealing with sun and shadow, of which can be very dramatic. But your position, like if you're on the dark side of the animal, you might, if you can, get on the other side of your animal, or if they're looking at you, then you've got that shadow and dramatic look with the glint in the eye. So these two photos, I asked a friend a couple of weeks ago when I put this together, I said, I'm showing you these two photos. What is it you see? She came up with something entirely different from what I had in mind for this presentation. I said, well, okay, what is it that you see then? She says, it's all about emotion. Boy, I hadn't even thought about that. I was thinking composition. And the lines here are very horizontal because of the bike, and they connect you to vertical. If you remove the bicycle, this is Hanoi in 2016, then you get this diagonal. And this diagonal leads you into right here. Same thing with the cowboy, only the direction is leading a little bit different. They've both arrived to their abodes, you might say, on their trusty steed, four-legged. and here with a bicycle. I was with a friend that I was staying with, and she was showing me around Hanoi and how to get back to the family apartment. And she's, Carol, look at that woman praying. And I actually fleetingly looked at this part, and it was here that it was the bicycle that I noticed. And if you remove the bicycle, then you get very diagonal lines. So the calming sense between both of them, she's come to pray. I know for a fact he's ridden 3 days over hill and dale, rough country, rounding up about 200 head of horses and driving them for about, I don't know, about 30, 35 miles. And I was done shooting the horse shoot, and I was staying there just observing. And for some reason, it struck me how he got off his horse and just relaxed. You can see he's in culturally, he's in his environment culturally. She's in her environment. So very different subjects. And yet, when it comes to the emotional end of things, they're both in a calming, this one in praying. Maybe he's just like, phew, I'm done for the day, sort of atmosphere. Now I'd like to remove this, and I can't remember quite how to do this. I'm afraid to click too much here. And see, these aren't moving. I usually have them dissolve into each other. So now I'm kind of lost here.
Should be under view.
Is it under view?
Where you
Let's check.
just were.
See, this is where I want to, okay, slide only.
There you go.
Let's see. Okay, so if I go back. Now see, now I can't make it, what is it with this technology? You learn it and then suddenly you forget it. No, that's where I don't want to go, because now I can't go forward. I can't go backwards. Rarely am I in here. So let me go back to this. Animate, disconnect. Yeah. Oh, here we go. This is it. All right. Up to play. So, discovering a variety of subjects through words. I stress words, and I think I go to bed with a thesaurus under my pillow. In part of that is that I do like to write, and so rather than using the same word over and over, definitely look into the thesaurus. But really, when you think about it, words lead you to a concept, which then invites you to subjects that you might never have even thought about dreaming about. I, for sure, am a realist. I'm pretty much, I've been told, I'm a classicist and a purist. And definitely I started with that idea with African wildlife for over 20 years. And even back then in the late 80s into the 90s, I did experiment with some abstract slow shutter speed, but I was starting to sell images in South Africa. And I realized that realism is going to sell versus abstract. When it comes to like calendars, postcards were big, posters, articles, the whole works. It takes someone, I think, here to, in my eye, has evolved quite a bit into a more abstract area, probably in the last 4 to 5 years. And so experimenting with more and more with slow shutter. I experimented, 30 years ago, but those photos are put way aside with film, in knowing that I am not going to be able to sell this, but to show it for a lecture, great. So introducing you to words and concepts. These 2 pictures are by 2 different students, 2 different classes and assignments. So this assignment had to do with, there was about 8 students in class in which I put 2 different words on 8 pieces of paper. And I was so glad I didn't have to do these assignments because I'm like, man, and I always like to challenge my students. And because I'm not sure I'd be able to come up with something quite so innovative. And her two words were toilet paper, probably because that was the rage during COVID, and silverware. But look what she's done here, how she's unwrapped this, unveiled the roll of toilet paper into the vase. Right away, when I see this, my concept that comes into my head is sand dunes, because I've shot a lot of sand dunes. Moving over here, different class, the assignment here was to photograph something that is special, that's been given to you. Maybe grandma made a quilt for you or something like this. In that, here was a friend, Pat was the photographer. A friend had given her 365 philosophical tidbits, all typed up on the colored paper and dropped into this container. And Pat, before she would go to work, would draw out one of these tidbits and read them, and with a smile on her face, went to work. And note they're both on these black backgrounds, which is great. Also take a look how she's positioned this. It's not straight on. This is fine leading in. When I teach something with architecture, I often say, shoot from the corner and then let this side be exposed. Let this side maybe even be more exposed, or however, but not, if you're going to shoot right on and turn this container around, it would have a little bit of a different effect. And if you do that with a building, then if you can, open the door so that's leading you through. So here, the words are leading to different concepts. And I liked playing with words. And some of the students, usually this is for the advanced students, like, what is the purpose of this? I'm like, words lead you to a concept. They lead you to an idea, and it pushes you into with your imagination and being innovative. So with words and in photographing a subject, think about body parts. Obviously, right here, this is North Vietnam. I was intrigued by the hands. What is she doing here with the hemp? What is she making? Look at what's happening here in relating the two subjects. He's obviously, this is a young osprey. You can tell by the white edging on the feathers. And he's using his talons like she's using her hands. And when you think about the big picture here, the big picture to me comes down to survival, the word survival, where he can't get along without his talons, his eye, his beak. She is making this hemp. Is she going to sell it, some material to a tourist, which brings him money to help feed her family, etc. Cambodia, he's disentangling his net, trying to get fish out of there. What's going on here? Now, actually, I should probably go over to the osprey and think about tug of war, the idea of tugging and pulling. This is the male osprey delivering the fish to the female. Now, I've been following this nest for 3 summers now, taking notes, anywhere from, as Linda said, anywhere from 2 to 4 hours sitting above the nest, looking down. And he delivers. And this was taken last summer, in which she had 3 chicks to feed. That was the most she's had. 3 summers ago, she had 2 chicks. A year ago, summer, she had 2 eggs, only 1 hatch. We had the big flood then, and that may have been the problem. And now he had to work hard because she had 3 chicks. So he hasn't quite released it. And I haven't talked to a biologist to find out what's going on. If this is mentally he doesn't want to, which I don't think is the reason, or his muscles just have not relaxed because she's pulling on this nice, juicy, fat fish. Now, so I have these 2 pictures. This was empty and blank. I'm like, what other picture can I put in there? So I started going through my library, which is all cataloged with the captions, and I saw the word string on a wire. I'm like, perfect. And this was only taken about 2 years ago when I was walking, and I saw this entangled string, which is much like here. And look what's happening here. one little strand of string is being pulled on. This is similar to here. I'm not pulling it, it's actually a breeze. So you've got three different pictures here between man-made and nature where the concept is coming to mind. Intertwining body parts that move versus static. It's not a great picture. I've told students when an animal's moving broadside to you, there's nothing very interesting about it. You can start looking at the body parts. This is probably all about texture. If that animal stops and they turn and look at you, the eyes are alert, there's a piece of grass in the mouth, the eyes are big, they're looking at something. Look behind you. Is there another animal approaching or what? Otherwise, definitely get away from the crowd, get in front of the animal. So you can tell this, the elephant is on the move. This one might be even more interesting. This one's slight action. This is static. This is tourism versus the elite guard, military guard in Athens, Greece. And I just found the foot, just putting the feet together, then it becomes very graphic with the steps. Now, this gets rather interesting because I'm going from static to motion. So this idea with board games came about when I saw a picture on a screensaver, and it was the queen leaning against the king. This is my picture taken with the 56mm lens baby lens, which can give you this glow. It's all manual, so it really, really challenges you. And Linda actually put her lens into my hands and got me interested in this particular outfit and experimenting. So I went home, set up my whole chessboard and thought, oh man, this is way too busy. I have to remove these chess pieces. And in thinking about compositional rules, so I'm working with diagonal and very horizontal. So it's very linear. And my positioning to light. This is all in the house. I may have used a headlamp to create these shadows, or it was coming in through the window. And I find that the night is probably the more interesting, but I set up just the pawns. So looking at board games, the chess set, I thought, what do I have that is similar, but not another board game? So I must have been in my Greece folder with the F zones. They came marching in, and look at the shadows they're creating. So this is movement. The shadows here on a diagonal can correspond here. You can look at horizontal with the heel of the boot as horizontal here. And so I just coincided them with each other as far as the concept. I would have to challenge you with board games because this is an assignment I gave to my class about, I guess, 2 years ago. And I used a Scrabble game, and I'm like, what do I do with these tiles? So I just sort of threw them on the board. And there's quite a few different things you can do. You can build a pyramid, you can put them on edge, you can, then I created a word that had something to do with photography or concept or edges, whatever we were working on at the time. But just think about that. Think about a backgammon game, Monopoly, which, you know, those boards are much more complicated than, let's say, a checkers or a chess board. But board games, difficult. And yet I got excited about it because there's something new for my mind to explore. Moving into staying with body parts, I've submitted many giraffes to calendars, have gotten a few in calendars, and sort of snickering or in a facetious way, I'm like, okay, I'm going to send this one in. I know it's not going to make 30 days up on the wall. No publisher wants something like this. But for the lecture, it came out, it's great. And it's one of my favorite giraffe shots because it is so unique. Now, comparing, you see, you have your African species. What's going on here? So we have stripping the acacia leaves, and you have stripping here with our North American animals. The moose has a prehensile lip, it hangs over. The black rhino has the same, and the black rhino was found in the bush. Think about that, black rhino and bush. that's where that particular rhino is versus, we'll say, the white rhino, which is out in the grasses grazing. So my concept here is what's for lunch. And it's a story idea I've proposed for one of our local magazines for summer. And so when I said that to a friend, she says, oh, you're going to show a carcass with a grizzly. I said, no, not necessarily. I just want to show the different ways and the different things that animals eat. So I even have a black bear reaching for service berries. So it doesn't have to be completely gruesome. So how did this all come about with me moving away from African wildlife, which was definitely my passion? I couldn't wait to return to Africa on my own in a very cheap way, pitching a tent. I still pitch a tent, sleep in the car in the national parks in Southern Africa, particularly South Africa and Namibia. And titles on calendars have great words and ideas or concepts to think about. And of course, here you're looking through a portal. And this is the cover of this calendar, which I took a picture of, and the cover is much more beautiful than the picture I took. But look at the light, and yes, the path that's leading where. So when I look at what's going on here, finding your way on, I've changed this word in my mind, on my photographic journey. And within this particular calendar, there were, I flipped through it. It's the first time in a few years. I saw that I've got a couple pictures in there, and they had to be filmed because I didn't turn to digital until 2005. And it was steps leading up, and another picture. And then I found this one where looking through, and think about that. Here's is an opening in the fence. You can open a doorway. I like opening doorways and working on that angle, like on Pat's container with the philosophical tidbits, not always looking straight on, but moving to the side. And those are simple compositional, different compositional guidelines. So the concept with moving through, this is a local golf course. I always took my level 1, level 2 students who are just learning and trying to understand depth of field. And this was a great area to work with depth of field. It was simple. How many trees do you want? Sharp, in focus, and moving around with your composition here. Angkor Wat ruins in Cambodia, same concept. Now, when I'm in Cambodia walking the passageways, am I thinking about trees? No. When I'm here, am I thinking about? No. It's again this concept of leading through. Here, this person, a friend says, hey, I want to go shoot the grain elevators in Ashton, Idaho. I said, okay, I'll go. I was not keen to do that, but I thought, well, I'll go. I'll take my camera. And as she got ahead with an entirely different idea in her head, again, more graphics with working with the structures, I saw this concept unfolding. So I took a picture. And from here, yes, you can crop this closer, bring her in closer, get rid of the foreground, etc., and actually make it more interesting. But for sure, I wanted to give you the man-made structures and the natural structure. So in taking the same image into a different temple at Angkor Wat, Cambodia again, and seeing this right here, how this is moving from close to or foreground to background. And then I flipped it just to show you the similarity right here, using these as trunks of trees. Your diagonal line moves you through. Here, I'm standing in the center, but I could crop this or I could move over. You can shoot this area 3 different ways: center, move over here, or move over here, just to show you, again, the similarity in that concept. Moving through, showing action. This particular image is currently on the 2024 Yellowstone calendar, and that's the calendar with Delaware North, which is in a lot of the national parks along with Xanterra. And this company I've been working with for several years, they're out of Florida. And I cropped it. And just remember that to me, your crop tool leads you to probably better composition or more interesting composition when you have to get rid of excess because you can't get close enough to your subject, let's say. You can see part of the road. So I cropped it in and I love the idea of the hooves. All of you live right next to a polo ground. It's like, you got to get to those matches. And there's so much you can photograph time in, time out. And, you know, start with your fast shutter speed. I know something like this is going to sell for what I'm doing with editorial. This would make a story in a magazine, if you can find a magazine that's still in operation, I guess. But then start dissecting. It goes into your body parts. Work on the mallet hitting the ball, the hands, the boot in the stirrup. Yes, he's moving through. And even then you start looking at the hooves. Whenever animals are running or feet or walking, I'm always watching for actually not this, because when you get this strike, it becomes static. Here you can see movement. This one is striking a little bit of movement, but you see the bend in the legs. And this is something I always taught when people are walking. Even in that previous shot, I think her foot is up right here. It's showing that movement with the foot. So you're seeing the sole of the foot. Moving here, this is Angkor Wat with 3 women walking. And then I'm at the Charles M. Russell Refuge. It's about 3.5 hours north of Bozeman in central Montana. The elk rut occurs in about the 3rd week of, mid-September into early October. And there's hundreds of elk. And there's also on weekends 200 or 300 people. You have to stand on a gravel road, and then they're in an open field. In the background of the woods, and then the Missouri River. And I'm standing there like, I've been doing this for how many years, and I do not want to shoot the same thing that everyone's shooting. And so several years ago, I just started working with slow shutter, and that's very much experimental. You'll end up throwing a lot away because you have to figure out what the speed is, how fast your subject is moving, how fast you're going to pan. This is a pan motion, and then setting your speed. It's all experimentation, but I find it's exciting and different. So work with your fast shutter, and if you get bored, move your position on the polo grounds where they're hitting the ball right towards you. You're standing behind the net, etc. And then just experiment with your slow shutter. Looking through or peekaboo, this stands on its own. You look at him, you're like, why is he got this expression on his face? And really, I could probably crop that closer. It's because there's a cub here pulling at him. Varying your positions to the wildlife position. These are, in working with the body parts, bighorn sheep are rather passive. They start their rut about mid-November, maybe a few days before Thanksgiving into early December. And there's a nice herd of them right about 8 or 10 miles before you go into the North Gate, which is Gardner, to the Yellowstone Park. I mean, these were shot probably from my car off the beanbag. You can get out, and I don't want to say you can get close. You want to keep 25 yards. If you got a big lens, it's close enough. But what I'm working here is here with the curve of the horn, definitely the eye peeking over. Same thing here. They're right on the other side of the road from me, and I'm working on the eye and letting this go soft. I have other pictures where this is sharp and then the eye is blurred. It's not one that I like, as well as something like this. Using the horn is framing. This one here, what really caught my eye was the nose nuzzle right here. To me, this is the first subject, secondary subject here. And then you've got the the curve. So the bodies aren't doing anything. They're not ramming each other. If they're ramming each other, yes, I'm using a different lens, maybe a 1-400. Otherwise, I have a 500 on Canons. And if the bodies aren't doing anything, to me, you get rid of them. And here's the impact right here. That comes with your cropping. Man-made, what is he watching? This is Istanbul. He's a tourist. He's leisurely taking his time. He's got his hydration bottle right there. And I love the way the shadows are coming towards me. And note how I'm using the sidewall. It goes back to Pat's, again, philosophical tidbits in her container, coming in from the side as it bends through. This one here, these are female Northern Harriers taken about a year ago. And when I did a whole series here, and I've got some that are a little more action with them up in the air, but it's the peeking through that caught my attention and sticking it in here to fill this blank space. North Vietnam, he's walking from a distance carrying all these leaves. If you were to put them down, they'd probably cover him even more because he was little. And he gave me this little peeking through with a smile. So these two relate, and these two relate as to what is he looking through. This one's peeking through, obviously from different, agriculture versus, it doesn't have to be wealthy to be a tourist, but just with the clothing and what he's doing in the temple. Looking out. Simplicity with light against dark. Again, looking through, here's our prop. I worked this prop 30-40 minutes, rearranged it. It's in Angkor Wat, one of the temples. This would never make a calendar, for heaven's sakes. And I'm like, okay, let's put it in to the presentation and have this similarity of glass light peeking through and how it works with, again, man-made structure. Very simple. Combining words with the idea of path and graphics, moving through. And graphics doesn't always have to be horizontal and vertical. And I'll tell you, just 8 years ago, 10 years ago, I would never thought that I'd be shooting graphics because of like nature and wildlife. But graphics with ancient civilizations intrigues me. And in contemporary sculpture, this was the Olympics were held in Greece in 2004. I was in Greece in 2020. And just the curves here, and with her disappearing or walking through, and how it almost spirals around is the feel that you get. Now, all these pictures were taken in color. And just remember, if you've got a lot of contrast, white or light against dark, think about putting it into black and white and experimenting much better. And then you have the beam of light that's taking you through or it's coming through. These are wood panels. It's a sculpture. So the idea for graphics came about, I think it was about two years ago, I think. 2 years or a year ago when I had my last class outside in the winter. And this particular idea picture came about when I came out of a building and it was late afternoon and I saw the light. These are oil tanks, petrol, gasoline tanks. And I noticed the light in the shadows. I'm like, oh, that is so interesting. And when you look at these different, is this the step? Do you step on the black part? Or is this a step right here creating the shadow? So it becomes an optical illusion. And so I started the graphics. I also did an edges class, just thinking about edges and how edges form something. And I think that was the class last year. Graphics was the maybe a semester before that. Here's the oil tank in gold light, late afternoon. I'm like, wow, this looks like flecks of gold. And really it's just water. Here it is in black and white. to me, I just like the colors and what's going on here, but I thought I'd show you what the black and white looks like. Graphics in nature. So the first image I pulled when I thought about graphics, because I have an affinity for fence lines, disappearing over the hill, soccer nets, tennis nets. This is a mesh netting in the winter. And this, so this was last year. And so I pulled this picture out. I'm like, okay, what do I have in nature that complements graphics that is man-made? And so I started going through my sand dunes. Oh, I know I've got a sand dune picture. So here it is right here. You see the similarity in the concept. The patterns are squiggly, which is fine. This is all about edges. Here is geometrical. This one was taken about 10 years ago. This young man is now 18. He's quite a soccer player. And in photographing him, I said, Dylan, I just want you to kick into the net. So I set up my focus on him and let him kick away. And I made sure I wasn't standing too close to the net. And so I threw this one in as well, just to show you the difference in the netting. Also, this whole concept, and this was a class I taught, probably 10 years ago, it was all about rhythms and patterns, with them finding rhythms and patterns, whether it was man-made or whether it was in veins within a flower, let's say, something natural versus man-made. Perspective can move in different directions. Perspective photographically might mean, like with Gary's mushrooms, you can look under them, you can stand above them. I wanted this word to lead to the word minimalism. And that was another class I taught just 2 or 3 years ago. And it's intriguing to get something out in like a sea of sand. This is my client in Death Valley, and he says, I'm going to walk up the dune. I said, great. Note the sun. Thank goodness he's wearing light color to make it pop, his skin tones pop against the shadow of the dune. And this is one of my favorite pictures. It just comes to mind, and this is what I started with. And I thought, what else do I have? So then I came down here. This is North Vietnam again. And with her, it's not as simple. And when you look at the word minimalism, and I had to look that up, and I had my students look it up. And I think the key words that came up was the negative space needs to be greater than your subject. So my perspective here is little to big. And then in looking in my sand dunes, I found this one, and I cropped it because there was way too much empty foreground, I felt. So I put it into a panel for this presentation. And it's interesting because I also found this one. Note the lines. This is not a great picture, and this is the Palouse, where I think many of you have been. And in researching about the Palouse and how to shoot it, there's Steptoe Butte that you drive up, and the comments were, take a big lens. Don't always take a wide angle lens. When you're down traveling those roads, those country roads, you're shooting the barns and the setting. And it's interesting. I pulled these two up, and oh my God, look what's happening here with which is connecting. When I was up on the Palouse was about 8 years ago. And as soon as I got up there, because I've shot so many sand dunes, I thought, this is just like shooting the sand dunes. So then I put them together and drew these lines just to show you the connection there that's going on in my head and making me connect with the same concept. Perspective with big to little kind of depends. You could be little to big, and a lot of negative space. And then here, this is one of my exhibit photos. And right now it's up on the canvas, 24 by 36, hoping to get sold somewhere. But in looking at this was cropped quite a bit. He is moving to a carcass that's down here. It's a bison caught in the what are called the blacktail ponds. This year we haven't had much snow, so I don't think there's any bison that has frozen, but year after year, they get stuck in there, they can't get out. And the resident grizzly comes from way up here across the Lamar Valley. And this whole area is very, it's bushy and there's a lot of grasses. To eliminate all that and bring out my grizzly, and I definitely noticed these sparse grasses, I waited for him to get into this open area. This was not a mistake. This is in a series of 3. Again, watching the foot, he is going to plant that, and he's going to look static. You want this motion. He's going to have like 2 front feet looking like this one. So is the grasses. This is my main subject. I would say this is secondary subject. This is the frozen pond. So what do I have with man or human in here? I started thinking about, again, North Vietnam. I came across my rice paddies. Here's the woman. Here's the grizzly. And then I cropped it. And now you can maybe see the similarities. It's not as, doing minimalism in winter and virgin snow is so much easier than doing it when in a different season. But when showing this to Linda, she says, but look at the diagonal line, because I almost cropped this out. And I'm like, gosh, you're right. I didn't even see that. And in showing this to several friends that I had over before I put the exhibit photos up, and again, this is something I didn't see. Look at the motion that his foot is creating, circular here and moving here. So now you have this motion, and you have this. What I saw was the grasses going the other way from these, but Linda picked up on this diagonal. I just thought it's always interesting when you have someone else looking at your photos. And when I do have somebody else, I always ask them, what do you like and what don't you like? Don't be afraid to say what you don't like, because that's how you learn. Again, in talking to Linda, she said she's got a project coming up. And I says, well, what's your word? Reflections. So the first thing that came to mind with reflections was, boats in water, maybe flowers reflecting in water, mirror reflections. Well, let's expand upon that. Let's go into Google and define the word reflection. Then it becomes reflective. Okay, so now you start thinking that connects with this person. But reflective can also mean reflection. It can mean antique automobile with a bright, shiny chrome fender that's reflecting itself in it. So reflective can also mean contemplation. Here's one of my main characters. His name is Bill. He has since died, but I took care of him since he was a puppy, and you're going to see him in a little bit. And he's in a contemplative mode. Here is reflection. This is in a temple in Cambodia. I don't know. The cat may be reflecting also. I'm not sure. But look what returns now are original pictures in this word of reflective in a calming sense. So my main characters, here's my second main character. You just met Bill, the retriever, is Azul. Azul is a cross between an Australian Shepherd and a lab. Now, neither of these are my dogs, but I doggy sat Azul for 1.5 years when the family, she was one of my students. She was originally from Argentina, and they drove down to Argentina. So I said, yes, I'll take Azul, because I saw how obedient she was. And Bill, with his brother Rocket, I started dog sitting them for weeks on end. So in walking the retrievers, I realized I have a gold mine walking right next to me for calendar titles, because golden retrievers are hot items. And so they made quite a few calendars and got on the covers. She came to class. Bill came to my classes for 6 years. He learned to balance treats on his nose, and they worked with depth of field, focus in the eye, maybe an F8 to get the nose sharp rather than blurry and in your face. And then I would snap my fingers, and Bill, and then Azu learned this from Bill, flipped the treat, and then we were working on shutter speed. And I got so excited when, oh, I caught the milk bone in the air, which was great. So this is called contemplation, and you're going to see poses. So I really enjoy working with dogs. And these three, you'll see the third one. Her name is Sophie, and she's now 3 years old. Music is from Pond 5, royalty free. So Rockin' and Bill were I already told you about them modeling and just teaching them different tricks and poses. Sophie started modeling for me when she was 4 months old. And now when I pull out my camera equipment, she is right there ready to go with me on an adventure, or if we're out walking and I have my camera with me, and she'll just sit down and she poses. So it's been a lot of fun. So that's contemplation. Questions on anything I've said previously? Is anyone still awake?
Yes, definitely.
Oh yeah, very good.
Yeah.
This is my website, and you'll see a diverse number of subjects. And I think my two favorite ones is the creative impressionism that I've put in there. These are Bohemian waxwings, and the black and white. This is in here. This was only done about 3 weeks ago. Mammoth Hot Springs. Here's the colored picture. Knowing that I might not be able to sell this in long exposure, I shot it in fast shutter speed, and then it's like, okay, everything's going to go into long exposure. To me, it fits well in black and white.
How often do you get to the park? To Yellowstone?
Well, this winter I've been 3 times, but we haven't had a lot of snow, so it's very drab in there. And this is one reason why I tootled on up to Mammoth Hot Springs. We've had so little snow that some of the snowmobiling, you couldn't snowmobile in.
Bummer.
Yeah, so tourism has been hurting. We don't have much snowpack. You guys are getting all the rain. The Northeast is getting all the snow. Some of it could be sent this way. Ski resort.
Okay.
All right, we'll keep moving here. Have about 15 minutes more. I've labeled this next part concrete subjects, meaning that these are subjects you have some control over. And this is an area that I always look, weatherunderground.com. Bill and I talked about that. He uses this as well. It gives you hourly forecasts. It might be raining from 8 to 10, clearing off by 11, sunny by 1 p.m. Always looking for that. Now, this time of year, I'm looking for snow because I like to shoot in the snow blizzards. The roads aren't great. This idea came about because of all the dust in Southern Africa, and this was published in a South African magazine using not just African animals, but also North American, like bison rolling, showing the effects of dust. And it's fun to shoot in dust because you get this very ethereal looking subject, which is dust. Here, a fellow drove up next to me. I was in Etosha National Park, northern Namibia, photographing using my long lens that was at 500. And he wanted me to use his camera. He had a Canon and photograph. It was a black rhino that I was trying. I said, sure. Then he asked me if I taught. And I said, yes. And he wanted a workshop. He owned the hunting reserve that was right to the south on the border of Etosha. I said, okay. So while we were tooling around, I noticed how powdery and soft the road was. I thought, well, we can create dust. So the next morning when we went out, drove back and forth, I was teaching him aperture priority. And then I drove back and forth and had him set up. I jumped out of the truck and started to run and along the road and then walk back for him to work on this idea of dust. And really you can, if there's two of you and you're on a gravel road, it's nice to experiment. Send one to create dust. You got to drive fast. Hopefully no one's coming. And then you can get the telephone poles or the wires that disappear or the fence line, etc. Here's our broom in action. Back to Cambodia. Just with the temples walking in becomes very ethereal. I got very excited about all that dust. Fog. Elm Creek, Yellowstone Park. This is sunrise, and there's a pullover there where you can wait for that sunrise to happen. You need, with fog, you need cool mornings. You can get to this area where you cannot see anything. You might as well tootle on down the road, mile and a half or so, where the fog is dissipated. And it's always nice when you get geese and ducks moving through your scene and filling this negative space. Now, the idea of fog, when you go to Weather Underground, you get the temperature, and let's say it's 40 degrees. You look at the dew point. Everything is listed there. Your wind, because I want to know on Quake Lake, which is in Montana, it's about an hour and a half from me, when that wind comes up, because I don't want to be on the lake. And when the dew point or the temperature is like 40 degrees, you look at the dew point. If it's 2 to 3 degrees above or below your temperature, you're going to have fog. It's one way to figure out, is it going to be a foggy morning or not? And a friend came along with me. I said, you want to get this fog? And she said, absolutely. So she pedaled ahead of me, and I wanted her to be disappearing. This was about a year ago, December, and in Grand Canyon, where there was a huge snowstorm, and then the clouds started to lift, and I had a chance to shoot a couple days worth in the Grand Canyon, which is something I needed, winter. And then it's always nice when you get clouds. Smoke and steam. Himba tribe doing a bathing cleanse in Namibia. And here, North Vietnam, I asked this chap if he would pull up the bamboo pipe and smoke it so I can get a picture. He just loved doing that. It's an art for them. And then I positioned him watching my background. It's almost like Spanish moss back here. And so they inhaled the smoke and they let it out slow. Like I said, it's an art for them and they want it to hover. So I did a series of shots. When it comes to steam, if you're in Yellowstone, wait till the bison often aren't doing a whole lot. They're very difficult to shoot. They're just kind of a big hulk. And it was a boring winter day a year ago when I got out of the car, 1 to 400 attached to my camera, walked down the road, and I just looked at the herd. I just wanted to observe and get out and get a little bit of exercise. They weren't doing anything. Then this one, it's a young one, got up and stood there looking that way. But then when it turned towards me, I'm like, okay, start shooting. Now, in my mind, I'm thinking crop. There's nothing going on with the body. To me, this is not a fantastic shot. So I cropped him and came out with this. And with all the negative space, the background being dark brings out your steam, and then the hoarfrost that's occurring here on the neck fur and right here on the body makes it a more interesting. I've seen this on a large digital screen being shown in a building that talks about the blend of interior decorating architecture with the arts. And I went in there and showed some of my images, and he uses this on a big digital screen, and it's like a TV screen. And when your TV's off, you can put any photo up. And of course, it's backlit. And I'm like, wow, that really popped. No one really goes to the park looking for fumaroles, and I rarely do as well. And so I'm on my way to Old Faithful. It was foggy that morning. And I thought, I think I'm going to stop at Fountain Paint Pots because the sun had started to come up. No one's on the boardwalk. I can set up my tripod, shoot a slow shutter speed, and shoot the fumaroles coming out slow. Again, this probably would not make a calendar. You've already seen this. And this is aerial shooting over Grand Prismatic, showing the steam. And I flew over it 3 times. I got students involved, about 6 of them. We all had to pay, and you could only sit up front or one in the back. By the second time, after the first time, I told the pilot, I says, okay, can you open the window and can the door come off? Because I could see the problems with shooting through a sort of a curved window. It doesn't look curved, but it's slightly curved plexiglass. And he says, yep. And I says, well, how safe is it? Because I'll gather up some students, give them a lecture, and send them off on how to shoot an aerial over Grand Prismatic. This is Grand Prismatic, the steam. I'm across the road, and it's very windy. And I wanted the silhouettes with the movement and the still people, and then the steam just sort of flowing like that. The shape of liquid, you're getting a lot of rain. So I would challenge you to get the splashes and the puddles, or even the splash against the windows, which can make an interesting photo. And this is a northern shoveler during the mating season, late April into May, up here at least last summer or last spring. And when I looked at it close at, obviously I like the shape here, is that this refers to peeking through, shown 20 minutes ago. You're all near the ocean. When you want a huge crashing wave, this isn't that huge, and experiment with your slow shutter. And then you have to wait, because the next huge wave is not going to happen. It may take 3 or 4 waves, and you get into that rhythm of watch, okay, 4 waves later, get ready, because you can see it, everything's starting to build up. And versus just shooting when it crashes against the sand here, or it doesn't even crash. It just sort of comes in and splashes a bit. And of course, you probably all know about, using a spray bottle with your flowers. And when going back to Yellowstone, this again is not something that it might sell as an editorial if I'm doing something off, and I've got the idea of letting off steam is my idea, and showing it differently than the geyser. I like shooting the geysers fast shutter to get this, especially if there's light behind, and get the splatter. I'm using what I call laser eyes and watching the water rise and fall, whether it's Old Faithful, this is Fountain Geyser, at where the fumaroles are, it's at Fountain Flats. Shape of liquid, it's not something, it blows through the rain, and if the sun pops, you better look for the rainbows, and then make a beeline for trying to get away from buildings, or it's coming out of an old barn or whatever. This is an area that I really enjoy going to. I took Linda there when she came up here a couple of years ago. And I shot this in high key, a little bit bright, and then it even made it more on the bright side to look like it's floating in the clouds. 2.5 seconds, you can see the time. And these two are in the same area, different times of season, and working with the icicles. So when people up here say, oh, there's nothing to shoot, oh my gosh, there's plenty to shoot. And I encourage you all to think out of your box, use words, and look for those subtle things that aren't always seen. This is Grand Prismatic. I flew over it, showed you that picture. I was standing across the road here. The road winds around for about a mile and a half. This is Midway Geyser Basin in the evening. I've shot it in the morning. This is about 5 years ago. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to shoot this in long exposure. I thought, what do I have? And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the irrigation sprinklers. Again, that concept, or irrigation systems. And here they are. You've got them all around you. You must. Up here, we certainly do. You can see what my speeds are the same day, the same area, using, I think, a 70 to 200 lens. And they become, it's like artistry in motion with the shape of liquid. The artistry of feathers in flight was a concept I had for a magazine that one of our local magazines says, yeah, let's go with it. And I'm in my kayak here, and here, somewhat docked. So I haven't thrown out sharp and tack sharp or fast shutter speed. And this is where mature is coming in. The younger eagle, just this little piece here is actually a dead fish. Working with the cormorants, positioning the kayak. This is not easy to do. Even on the lake, your front of your kayak's moving, you're twisting around, and what you don't want to do is look behind you because you'll probably tip over. And of course, your slow shutter here. So the artistry of feathers in flight also had to do with patterns in our feathered friends. Shooting blizzards. This came about shooting in slow shutter speed maybe only 3 years ago. I'm like, I got to do something different. And actually working on a beanbag. This one on a beanbag where the plow has left the snow on the side of the road. This is why it's so steamy-like, and you can see slow shutter. Very different, more pastoral, impressionistic, which I like. Shooting fast shutter, getting the large snowflakes. This is the end. This is a minute and a half or so on rhythms and patterns. The music is from Pond 5, real royalty-free music. The first one I showed with the shadows and piano keys was Jennifer Thomas, pianist, and that was from her album Illumination, and the name of the music was called Illumination. So this is our final. So the journey has ended, and I invite you to go and explore and discover new paths, and give you ideas. And if you're stuck, open up a dictionary, just look for a word, and maybe you find the word splash. And the first thing you think about is all the rain you have in the puddles or against your window or something. So questions?
What's your next class going to be?
Yeah.
What are you doing next?
I haven't thought about it. This is my sabbatical year.
Oh,
Ask me, this is my gap year. Boy, I really enjoy teaching, but it becomes a strain on the brain because I'm always thinking new ideas, and those ideas come from experience. I'm not really looking at the computer. I heard someone ask this of a lecturer a couple of years ago, say, where do you get your ideas? Oh, go under Google ideas on the computer. And I'm like, why aren't people using their brains? So all this comes from my own experience with dissecting the body parts, watching the behavior. And in teaching classes, the questions I get, whether it's technical about tripods, camera equipment, whatever, I've had to learn that. I mean, I'm a Canon shooter. Learning Nikon, oh my God. I was shaking my shoes the first time I started working with Nikon, and I felt complicated menu. And then Fuji and Sony started arriving. But starting working with people on the basics is one thing, but trying to keep the program going with the advanced students and then coming up with new ideas versus, okay, we're going to do landscape photography. Okay, we're going to do wildlife or pet photography. Let's keep delving and go deeper, looking through your subject like a flower and looking at edges that form your main subject or the idea of graphics. So if people are interested, I'd probably come up with something. I know with Linda, I'm working with her. I do consulting, and she'll show me, okay, these are the pictures. Okay, why? Let's make it a little bit different with cropping. And I think your cropping tool is your composition. That the Himba woman that I showed, one of the assignments was there, I don't know, 6 or 7 people in the class. I says, everybody crop it differently and then bring it in. It was so interesting to see who is seeing what. And people, whenever they did their assignments, they had to write a story or tell about, it could have been that they tripped over their tripod, which is something, we all do, or we drop a filter or something crazy happens. That's all a part of the adventure of going out and shooting. So
thank you so much.
It's great
for coming tonight.
Well, I didn't go very far.
Neither did we.
Sharing with us.
Yeah, no, it was like I said, this was difficult because bringing a picture like this up, what am I going to relate it to man-made? And maybe it was people walking in a slow shutter speed or something. So I hope I've given you some ideas.
Great idea.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Good.
Thank you.
I think
great
that last video that you showed, one of the things I noticed was all these fanned leaves and fanned other stuff. It was really cool because I don't think I would have looked at that if I hadn't heard you speak.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the word that you were using.
Fanned, like fanning out.
F-A-N?
Video.
F-A-N?
Yeah. Things that fanned out. There were lots and lots of
leading line.
Like that.
Okay, so that comes down to like your leading lines.
Yeah.
And you know what that
They were
goes
in the
to?
shapes of fans, a lot of them, and it was like, I don't think I would have made that connection.
But
But
what would you connect those words with some other photo that you saw in this presentation?
oh, some of the black and white ones early on.
Yeah, the shadows.
Yeah, shadows,
Piano
piano
keys.
keys.
And there's that connecting concept, you
Mhm.
see. And when you look behind me, that's Grand Prismatic with the bacteria mats. And that's, I go there every single time. It's always different. And so it's like little terraces, tiny, with the bacteria mat that leads to the pool. I don't know if I can show you this way back here, which is beautiful blue turquoise. But all these patterns always change. And the bacteria mat is made up of thermophiles and it needs light. So come spring, summer, when we have more light, they become active and the colors become brilliant. Then they
Cool.
start fading during cooler days.
Field trip.
Field trip. Yeah. If you can get a
We'll just
parking
get a
spot.
bus, get a bus and go down like.
Yeah. So I thank you for listening and watching so attentively and not quite falling asleep.
Never.
Thanks for being here.
Great.
Nice,
Thank
Do
you.
that.
Really
Thank
good.
Thank you
you.
very much. It
Thank
was
you.
great meeting all of you.
You too.
We'll see you another
We'll
time.
follow you.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, check out my my website, and if people have questions and want to take some sort of class or consulting, we can do it by Zoom or the Google Chat or whatever. Linda can fill you in on that because she's done quite a bit of that.
Yeah. Now that you know how to do it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I might be stumbling through.
Very,
Okay.
very good. Thank you.
Thanks
night.
so much.
Thank you
Good
very
night,
much.
everybody.
Good
Oh,
night.
you're
Thank you,
welcome.
Gary and Bill.
Okay. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill, for all your help.
Sure.
Thanks,
Okay.
Good job.
Bill.
Good job, Carol.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Those
Thank you.
horses coming back. Shoot those horses again.